Messy as hell. I didn't notice it till I looked on the stream. This is a bit of an unexpected stream. I had a platform committee meeting tonight, so I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to stream. So I didn't schedule it. I am just rambling a little bit, and I just got a notification that I'm live on YouTube, as if I wouldn't know that. I'm rambling a little bit to give time to potentially build an audience. Of course, the notifications aren't going out on Facebook because my 24-hour ban has now turned into a week and a day because there's a glitch on Facebook in which it doesn't recognize when you've served your time. So um, the notification did go out on Twitter. If other people want to let people know. Otherwise, people will watch this stream after the fact. However, I do know that Michigan has been a topic of interest, and I want to give people the chance to watch live in case they want to post comments. But one thing I am going to be doing is interacting with comments that were posted after the fact on my prior video, which was last night. This one should be shorter. But first of all, I want to acknowledge an error that I made. I'm not perfect. Most of you know that. Most of you know that very well. But one thing I do like to do is when I make an error, I like to concede it right away. And I made an error on something that I just missed. It was right there and I missed it. So no excuses, just a concession of an error. The bylaws, in fact, do mention that the board, not the party, but that the board would be incorporated. I had previously completely wrongly said that the convention delegates did not approve the incorporation. Now, I don't know what form the approval took place, but obviously, since the Michigan bylaws mention the Libertarian Party of Michigan Executive Committee, Inc., and Section 3, I think it's Article 3, Section 1, obviously there was some kind of motion that passed. So on that point, I was incorrect. However, it's irrelevant to this issue. It could be relevant in the future, but it's not relevant to this issue. But I was wrong, and I like to say when I was wrong. I completely missed that word "inc" right there. I did word searches for incorporate, corp, but I didn't do word searches for INC. Lesson learned. So I want to get that correction right out there in the open. However, that creates some additional problems for them. Not in this situation, but potential future problems that I do hope that the board really talks with an attorney about. I understand that an attorney wrote this provision. I'm not presuming to be an attorney. I'm not. I'm just a person who can read things and see potential problems. And this does not seem like a good idea to me. Let me tell you the one problem that I see. And I know that Brandon has assured me that the attorney who originally wrote this assured them it wasn't a problem. I am not convinced. And it does relate to the issue they're facing right now. So let me tell you what I see. Even in looking at the corporate bylaws, which have not been adopted by the members in convention. That's a whole other issue. But in looking at the two, it seems like you have two parallel boards. I'm going to use a Christian allusion here, where you're talking about logical priority and maybe not temporal priority. So here's the Christian allusion I'm going to give you. And I know wars have been fought over this. Does the Father proceedeth from the Son? The Spirit proceedeth from the Son or the Father, or both the Father and the Son? And that's what divided the Eastern and Western Church. But when you talk about things like the Trinity, it's talking about a logical priority between the members of the Godhead, not a temporal priority. There wasn't a time where the Son didn't exist. There wasn't a time where the Spirit didn't exist. Analogously, I know I do weird analogies. It seems to me that the LPMI bylaws create parallel boards that have a logical priority, even though they come into being instantaneously with each other. They have a logical priority. The delegates at convention elect the board of the party. The corporate bylaws explicitly state that the party is separate from the corporation, which is great. So you can't have a Virginia situation whatsoever there, because it says if the corporation somehow no longer exists, anything that the corporation may have owned reverts to the LPMI. So it explicitly acknowledges that the party is separate from the corporation. The corporation is merely a shell that's been put around the board of directors to try to limit their liability. If they ever get sued, I'm not so sure how successful that will be. People do try to pierce the corporate veil. Who knows? That kind of stuff always is a bit of a crapshoot. I leave that to the attorneys. However, with the bylaw saying that the members elect the board, and then the people that the members elect then become the board of directors of the corporation, there's a logical priority there. So in the citation of the law that a member of the board can't be removed except by a vote of a majority of the members or something to that extent, a member of the board of the corporation, I don't think members of the board of the corporation are ever removed. I think what gets removed is they get removed as a officer or director of the LPMI, which then disqualifies them. They're no longer entitled. It's like when you're an ex officio, like I'm an ex officio member of the National Convention Committee by virtue of being national secretary. If I resigned tomorrow, or this LNC wouldn't do that, was removed tomorrow, I no longer would be an ex officio member of the convention committee, but I was never removed from the convention committee. I just no longer had it by virtue of another office. The members of the corporate board are members of the corporate board by virtue of being board members of LPMI. They cease to be members of the board of directors of the corporation when they cease to be officers. So they're never removed. What you remove is an officer or director of LPMI. I don't know if this subtlety, everyone is catching what I'm throwing down. And again, I leave those things to the attorneys. But I think it's a really interesting question for the future, because I don't think that law that they keep citing can ever come into effect, because I don't think you ever remove officers of the corporation. You only remove officers of the LPMI, which then means that any positions that they occupy by virtue of the LPMI office, they are just no longer qualified to have. And that is an important distinction. However, in the present situation, nobody was removed from office. That is why that law that people keep citing just isn't relevant. It doesn't matter. We can argue till the cows come home whether or not they are bound by the Michigan nonprofit corporation law. It doesn't matter, because even if they are, let's just say for sake of argument that they are, despite their bylaws provision to the contrary that says that any bylaws that we write that are contrary to state law is intentional, and we're exercising our rights of self-ownership and voluntary association, screw the law, to do what we want. Now, whether that would hold up in court is an entirely different matter, and that's not parliamentarily correct. But as libertarians, they have basically said, we reserve the right in our bylaws to write bylaws that are against the law. And I think that's based. And I want that bylaw in Colorado, because you do have that right as a free human being if you're not committing violence against other people. But again, that's not kosher when it comes to parliamentary stuff, but it's what their bylaws say, and their bylaw supersedes their parliamentary authority. But anyway, probably wouldn't hold up in a court of law. But any libertarian that sued another libertarian over that, they're not a libertarian. Sorry, you have the right to peaceful dissidence, to conscientious objection. If the delegates in convention said, if we put something in these bylaws that's against the law, we don't care. That was their decision. I believe that's their right to make it. Again, none of that is relevant to the situation here, because even if they said this law doesn't apply, The law they keep citing is saying that an elected director, officer, I'm using these terms interchangeably, even though they're not exactly interchangeable, can only be removed by a majority vote um, of the membership. Of course, the corporate, I'm not even going to go down that rabbit trail. It doesn't matter because nobody was removed. In order to be removed, you have to have validly held the office. If your election was invalid due to lack of notice or other violations of the bylaws, you never held the office to begin with. You can't get something taken away from you that you never had. This should not be difficult to understand. This isn't highbrow legal reasoning. And when you start throwing out terms like self-executing, that makes no sense. The Judicial Committee of Michigan has the authority to decide questions regarding the bylaws. Saying the the elections in question were invalid, that takes care of itself. No further action is needed. They were not valid elections, therefore no one got removed. And I'm not going to call this hypocrisy because it could be that somebody will say, I used to have this opinion and I don't have it anymore. Lord knows I've changed my mind on opinions before. But remember, these same people were arguing that they could have removed Andrew Chatterton at an executive committee meeting. Well, which is it? Does it require a majority vote of the members at convention? Or are you going to hold to your bylaw that says with 14 days notice, you can do it at an executive committee meeting? Which is it? You can't have it both ways. Now, I can tell you my opinion. I think you can do it at an executive committee meeting because your bylaws say that if you put anything in there that purposely violates state law, you've done it on purpose. I think that's your right as a libertarian. Reason number one, why I think you could do it at an executive committee meeting. Reason number two, you're not removing anyone from the corporate board. You're removing them from the LPMI board, which then disqualifies them for the corporate board. Might seem like just semantics to you, but I don't think it is. Again, that sort of thing is a lawyer thing, and I'm not a lawyer. But it does seem common sense. Other comments I wanted to address. Somebody had asked me in the thread, I know who the person is. I just don't want to mention names unless it's necessary. Y'all could go back and read the comments and said, aren't you famous for listening to both sides before you come to some kind of opinion? No. Because people, okay, let me put it to you this way. What do you mean by listen to both sides? You mean like talking to just a million people? I'm not an investigative reporter. Okay, I look at this from a parliamentary standpoint, from a procedural standpoint. The best thing to look at when you're doing that is the documents and the record, the bylaws. Sometimes you might need to ask questions about intent, the rules, the documents. That's what I look at. I talk to people when I have questions about the documents. If the documents are clear and there isn't any ambiguity, and particularly when there's video of things, no, I do not spend my life interviewing every possible person on the planet before I have an opinion. Now, there are some circumstances where I had to do that, such as the original situation in New Hampshire, because the only document we had was that weird ass letter from Joe Bishop Henchman and nobody knew what it meant. It's like, what does this mean? So at that time, I'm like, well, you got this side saying it means this side saying it means this. Both of them, either side could have been right at that point. That's why I talked to them both, because the documents and the records weren't clear. Same thing in Delaware. Things were not clear until I understood the argument that Will McVeigh was making. But in Massachusetts, I never talked to anybody on that board. The record was clear. Their public statements were clear. The things they put down on paper are clear. What's going on in Michigan, there are filings in a judicial committee action. Those are the statements of the parties that I reviewed. There is no need to go do independent interviews. You should have made your arguments before the Judicial Committee. The documents are absolutely clear. With that being said, however, my telephone number is public. Anyone can call me if they think there's something I don't know. Every single time somebody has told me something that they thought I didn't know, with one exception, which is the error that I admitted today, I already knew it. And it doesn't make a difference. Something people need to realize, just because someone disagrees with you doesn't mean that they just don't know what you think. Most of the times they know what you think, they just don't agree. But on the issue of the word ink being in the bylaws, I was absolutely wrong on that. That was my old eyes didn't see it, and I should have. So that was an error on my part. And when I make errors, I admit them. But the law in this case doesn't apply. No one was removed. And there is something fundamentally wrong with an organization that sets up a judicial committee and then the board decides, we could just do what we want. I'm going to give you another national example. I keep using the example of myself where I say, I know what it's like to not like a judicial committee opinion, but let me use a different example. The past corrupt LNC did not like the decision that the Judicial Committee made in Delaware, but they still followed it. Even that absolutely corrupt LNC followed the Judicial Committee because they realized that that's not an option. That's the court of final appeal on those things. And even though the chair and multiple members of that LNC absolutely disagreed with the Judicial Committee, they followed that decision. And so that's an even better example. Your own internal processes have decided. To not follow them means that members cannot trust you in the future to honor the terms that they've set up. Sometimes those terms will not turn out the way you like. But those are the terms, and you're proving yourself untrustworthy, that when you don't get a result you like, you're just going to pretend like those terms don't exist, threaten to bite people in the neck, or strip naked at meetings. None of which are leadership qualities or the signs of maturity. So now, for those of you on the other side, and there are good faith people on the other side, people I've said in the comments that I greatly respect, I'm going to urge you once again, it's not too late. What you are doing right now, I can tell you where it's going to end. And when I'm telling you this, it's my best prediction. I obviously am not a sole decision maker. I obviously cannot see the future. But I think what I'm going to tell you is my best prediction of how things are going to go. What you're doing right now, and this part is a fact, what you're doing right now is basically, without officially forming a new political party, you're forming a new political party and using a name that you have no legal right to use. Because there already is a Libertarian Party in Michigan, and it's not you guys. And if you want to form a new political party, go ahead and do it and get your own name and have fun with that. But right now, what you're doing is fraudulent. That is without question, in my view. And absent a contrary vote of the LNC, that's the position of the National Party. The person I respect and that I am friends with that is claiming to be chair is not, and is fraudulently holding themselves out as chair. And that's not going to end well. I'm not saying it's going to end in some kind of like state action or anything like that. I'm just saying it's not going to work out the way you think it is, because you're not the chair of the Libertarian Party of Michigan. Andrew Chatterton is. And if you don't want Andrew to be chair anymore, you've got to go through the processes that is the contract with the members, not go rogue. Right now, you're a rogue board. And you can stop it now. There are some people on your side that have supported people that have done things like strip naked on stage at convention or walk around the convention floor waving around dildos. That is what you're aligning with. And if you think the wider party is going to side with that, I think that you are gravely mistaken. It's not going to turn out the way you think. It's not going to turn out with the results of whatever fake convention you are setting up being recognized. They will not. And I know, and like most of you, you are libertarians. You belong in the actual Libertarian Party of Michigan, and you need to work through the processes, because the route you're going right now, you're going to be in some kind of political party, all right, but it's not the Libertarian Party, which means you're going to have zero say in how we choose our presidential candidate, how we choose our next LNC, or being a delegate at the 2024 convention. If that doesn't matter to you, then fine, continue with what you're doing. But I think it does matter to you. So you need to do things the right way. There is an authorized special convention that you asked for, set up for April 2nd. That's the right way. And let me see if there were other comments. I think I addressed them all. But let me take a look on the tube of you. YouTube. And I'm so surprised because I can see how many viewers there are that there's been no comments. But I think everyone pretty much understands what's going on. But if you have something you want to put in comments, please do, because I'm about to go offline. My channel. Let's find. Oh, here we go. My theme music. Shit, there's 59 comments on that video. Okay. Nope, I think I covered everything. There's one subthread with 30 replies, but I want to make sure I covered everything there. Oh, and I did clarify because for some reason, people seem to think that I was advising Andrew Chatterton in June. I haven't been involved in an advisory capacity in this matter whatsoever. I'm an observer. Back when a question was asked to me in June, I referred the Michigan, specifically Mr. Chatterton, but the Michigan board, to an outside parliamentarian and said that I couldn't get involved in any kind of advisory capacity. So anyone who is confused on that, the first that I dived into this at all, like in any kind of comprehensive manner, was after the JC decisions were released. Okay. I think there's one thing I wanted to read here if I can find it, but when there's a lot of comments, it gets difficult. Nope, that was it. Okay. Well, that is going to be it for this evening. Let me do the YouTube stuff. If you like this inside baseball type stuff, it's not really my favorite stuff to do. I like doing LP history. Please do subscribe to my channel. If you'd like to support my work, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. It really, really does help. And if I seem a little harried today, it has nothing to do with Michigan, the Colorado legislature, the duopoly, the terrible people in power are trying to screw Colorado's ballot access laws. So to be honest with you, no offense to Michigan or anyone else, that's much more on my mind right now. I'm going to be concentrating on trying to keep our really good ballot access laws. So that just came up today, and that's what's preoccupying me. We're going to be testifying before the Capitol on the 9th. So if I seem a little distracted, that's why, because never underestimate the state wanting to just completely screw over libertarians. Tomorrow, I hope to do a show, not on history. Actually, Matt Walsh decided that, he was going to take his pro-hanging and pro-caning stance and just double down on it. And he did an alleged rebuttal to somebody. I forgot what show it was from. And I wanted to go through that because Matt actually said, though I agree with him up to a point, but any of you folks out there who think that we have like all this stuff in common with today's conservatives. You couldn't be more wrong, because there, I'll be extracting out the sound clip, but there's Matt Walsh saying liberty isn't an inherent good or isn't the inherent greatest good. He is not pro liberty by any stretch of the imagination. And we need to stop pretending like these guys are. Doesn't mean he doesn't say some things that are right. He did a really good show today talking about some of the faults in no fault divorce law. Now, I don't agree with his solutions, but he did point out some inequities, the way men get screwed in divorce and things like that. It's just I don't agree with his solutions. I'm probably going to interact with that show at some point in the future. But no, Matt Walsh is not even libertarian-ish. He's not a libertarian whatsoever. And we will be going over that tomorrow. Okay, guys. Well, I'm lonely without comments. But I hope you found this enlightening, and I'll talk